Today we're going to be talking about relationships between tables in SQL. We're going to be talking about the three different types: one-to-many, one-to-one, and many-to-many. The first one that we're going to go over is a one-to-many relationship, which I find to be very, very common. So let's get this started. The first thing that we need to do is we need to create an SQL file so that we can store all of these commands. That way we're not having to run in the PSQL shell every time. Just makes it a lot faster. So I'm going to call this mycompany.sql. Alright, so the very first step that we need to take when we're in the file is we need to actually create the database. So I'm going to say create database, and we're going to call this my company. And then we need to connect to that database. Alright, now we're going to create some tables, and these tables are going to have relationships. So the first table that we're going to create is going to be called departments, and we're going to use the create table command. And inside of departments, we're going to have two columns. We're going to have an ID, which will be an integer, and the primary key. And we're also going to have the name of the department, which will just be varchar, and let's cap this to 50. Alright, that looks good to me. Next, we're going to create another table so that we can have a relationship to the departments table. And this table is going to be called employees. And inside this table, we're going to also have an ID as a primary key. We're going to have the employee's name. And we're going to also cap that to 50 characters. We're going to have their age, which will be an integer. We're going to have their salary. And you have two options here. You could put integer, but because we already have that above, I'm going to put the equivalent of a float value, which will be a decimal. Okay. And next, we're going to create something called department ID. This will be an integer. Alright, now here the next part comes in where we're actually going to connect this table and give it a relationship with the departments table. And the way that we're going to do that is the keyword foreign key. So we're telling it the foreign key is going to be on this column, department ID that we have above, and we are going to reference the departments table with the ID column. So what this is saying is this right here, whatever this number is going to be, is going to be the same as this one here, so that we can distinguish that that's the department that it's in. Alright. And before we move forward, I did want to clarify. So these numbers right here, what they represent, the 2 represents the values to the right of the decimal, so meaning you can only have 2 numbers to the right of the decimal, like the sense would be. And on the left-hand side of the decimal, we are saying 10. You could make that as large as you want, but if you're making more than 10 figures, you're doing very well for yourself. So, let's continue on. Right now, we haven't actually ran this file and created anything. We're going to do it all at the same time, and I promise you, we're almost there. but let's give it some values so that at the end we can actually see the connection. So to give it some values, we're going to insert into, and let's start with departments. And we're going to give them an ID and a name. And the values that we're going to give them, we'll give it an ID of 1, and if you have an ID of 1, then you work in sales in that department. So if you are in the department with the ID of 2, let's say you work in marketing. All right, now let's add some stuff into the employees table. So insert into employees, and we're going to insert into them ID, name, age, salary, and the department ID. And the values we're putting in. The first value is the ID, and that needs to be unique. So it's going to start with a 1. Their name, we're going to name this person John. John is going to be 25 years old. John is going to make $50,000 a year. And John is in sales. This number right here, the 1, represents the department ID. The 1 represents sales, because that's what we said right here. All right, so next, let's just add a little bit more data. Let's make 2 more. So let's make someone else in sales with John. Let's say, give them a unique ID, and let's call her Jane. And Jane is 30. She's making a little bit more than John. And we're going to leave the 1 because she is in sales, and that is the ID for sales. Next, let's add someone to the marketing department. We'll call them Bob. And Bob is 35. Make it about $70,000 a year. And we're putting a 2 because that is the ID that points to market. All right, excellent. So now, when we run this, we want to actually be able to see the data. So to see it, we need to run the command select, and we want to see everything from departments. And I also want to see everything in employees where department ID equals 1, because we know that we have placed 2 people inside of sales, so we are fully expecting to see John and Jane come back with this line right here on 28. And now's the moment of truth. Let's try it. So we're going to run our command, and I just want to make a quick shout out, quick note. This is the command you will run as a PC user. If you are a Mac user, you're going to need to connect your database inside of this code. But as I'm not a Mac user, I'm going to show you the way that PC users will run this command. So we are running just like this, and I'm telling it we're going to run in the we're going to run the PSQL shell with the user of Postgres, and the file that I want it to run is the file mycompany.sql. And enter. Enter my password. Awesome. So let's just check to make sure we got everything back. All right. Create database, our first command. Check. You are now connected to my database, to my company. Check. That's from line 3. All right. The next thing should be to create a table. Check. That's done. Create another table. Check. Then where you should see 5 insert intos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Check. Next thing, we want to see everything in departments, which will be sales and marketing. Check. And last but not least, we are selecting all the employees in Department 1, which is John and Jane. So this is an example of a one-to-many relationship. Now, what exactly does that mean? What that means is an employee can be in one department. They can be in sales, they can be in marketing, whatever department name you give them. However, a department can have as many employees as is needed. Seeing as how John and Jane are both in sales, that shows the example of the relationship for a one-to-many relationship. One to many employees. So each employee belongs to one department, but the department can have several employees. I hope that this made sense. Please let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I will push all of this stuff up to GitHub, and just send me a message on Slack if I can help you with anything.